I think it's really, really important in our sports movement that we are honest among ourselves and really telling our own history to ourselves, and so that the people way back when who started the GLBT sports movement, you know, a long time ago, and people like John Damian, and today you say, you know, John Damian the jockey, and people say, who? They've never heard of him, and this was a really important story. I think starting with an even wider perspective, because there's an attitude among some people in the community that the whole general LGBT rights movement started with Stonewall, and that's just not true. That very basic legal decision that had to be made of, could our organization send their publications through the U.S. mail? And that was one of the very first decisions that we had to win in court, was to be able to, you know, for an organization like the Mattachine Society or the Daughters of Bilitis to send their little newsletters in the mail, and to have them to be considered not pornography. That all happened a long time ago. There was a lot that we didn't know about people who'd been very quietly working in a range of sports. For example, in the 1970s, I was involved in, not just in long distance running, but I had been involved in equestrian sport. And I became aware that there was a certain degree of openness of lesbians and gay men in equestrian sports like show jumping and so forth, and that people were kind of socially out and nobody had a big issue about it. So there was beginning to be people in their own personal world beginning to realize of, you know, where it was opening up and how and in which sports, whereas today we have a much broader perspective because of everything that has happened, not only here in the United States in such a variety of sports, but globally all over the world. It was very tiny in the 1970s. We just were kind of beginning to look over the backyard fence into other people's backyards and see what was there. Women would fall over dead if they ran farther than 2.5 miles. I mean, this was where it was in 1968 when I started distance running, and was aiming at the Boston Marathon along with a whole group of other women, and because we had been out there running and training, we knew it wasn't true. But there were many, many people in the sports world who believed this, including women who were in positions of power in women's track and field. At that time, they were the ones who made the rules for everybody else. I remember running the first time in the Boston Marathon, and crowds along the side of the road, and I wasn't even out then. I was sort of thinking about it, and I was just concentrating on running my race and getting there and so forth, and I remember people screaming at me from the sidelines because the assumption was if I was out there on the road, I had to be a lesbian, because no straight woman would even want to do this, right? So people were yelling, "Dyke!" at me, you know, "Dyke! Dyke!" And I'm like, what do they know about me? They don't know anything about me. I'm just out there running, you know? I don't think it's going to be just one big coming out that's going to change everything. But there are so many different areas where that kind of example is going to have to penetrate. And one of the really important areas is in our schools, in public education. So it's important for things to continue to percolate and change in all of these different areas that we have to change. It can't just be one big explosion that's going to magically change everything.